As you can see, there has been a passage of time, as has become traditional in these videos. We are up to chapter 22, The Mesmerist, and we are watching the show trial of Cadence Blackburn. So the scene that flickers into life on the big screen is one that we recognise. We see Noelle and Cadence at the Wondrous Welcome, aka the garden party full of judgment from earlier. Noelle and Cadence are lined up at some kind of dessert buffet at the garden party, and Noelle is just being her kind of typical snobby, pretentious, rude self, and she doesn't even remember Cadence's name. She calls her Katie, even though it's quite clear at this point that Noelle and Cadence have the same patron, Baz Charlton, and so therefore would be somewhat acquainted with each other. It's very clear as well that Cadence has just had a gutful of this girl, and she turns around in line to the person behind her, who happens to be the perfect person for the job that she is about to assign, Hawthorne Swift. Cadence leaned in close to Hawthorne and spoke in the same flat, husky voice Morrigan remembered her using on the twins at the book trial, and again on the society official at the chase trial. Don't you think somebody ought to drop that big green thing right on her head? And of course the big green thing that she's referring to is the big green neon jelly sculpture, which of course Hawthorne does go and drop on Noelle's head. We see this scene from a different perspective now, because when it had originally played out, Morrigan saw Noelle's friend, who we now know as Cadence, and saw that she was laughing. She's giggling helplessly, and she assumed that she was laughing at Noelle's cruelty. But of course now we see she's looking up at Hawthorne. She knows what's about to happen to Noelle. She is laughing at the vengeance that she is about to enact, or the punishment she's about to enact on Noelle for being such a snobby, awful bully. And Hawthorne is delighted. He doesn't even mind being used in such a way. He says, might not have been my idea, but it was still brilliant, and he's not wrong. So we see these scenes of trickery and manipulation that Cadence or her patron or both have stitched together to present to the elders to show her knack, her talent, her power, her gift, which is that she is a mesmerist. So she can use her voice to persuade people to do pretty much anything. And Morrigan sees this playing out on the screen, and an ability that Morrigan has, and we see this kind of repeated at various points throughout the series, is that things that other people would look at and think are quite sinister or dark or negative or bad, she is able to look at it and say, oh wow, that's a mean gift, but it's a gift. Like, she sees the value, and she is impressed. She is deeply impressed by what Cadence is able to do. Also, we see that it was Cadence who convinced the official at the chase trial that the perfectly normal unicorn was actually a winged horse with its wings tucked alongside it, and that someone had stuck an ice cream cone on its head, which of course Morrigan is just puzzled by. She's like, this girl snatched my spot in the next trial away from me, and then she gave it back to me. Why did she feel guilty? What is it? I have said from the beginning that Cadence is kind of one of my top 3 favourite characters, and I think in all honesty she's probably battling out for first place, because it's based on definitely the fact that, like, I know a lot about Cadence's kind of life and backstory. I know a lot about what will happen with Cadence in the future, but even just based on what we have seen on the page of Cadence at this point, she would be my favourite, one of my favourites, because this gift that she has, it is not on the same level at all as most of the other children. You know, Hawthorne is a very talented dragon rider. Anna is like phenomenally gifted with her surgery and what, you know, like all of these kids are incredible. But Cadence has this like formidable, incredibly powerful and potentially very, very dangerous power. And anyone else, any adult or child, like that could be quite corrupting. It's frankly a miracle that Cadence isn't already just taking over the world at age 11. And it's because Cadence has this like incredible moral center. And I don't know, I've always loved that about Cadence, that she has at her fingertips the most extraordinary ability to essentially rule the world if she wanted to. And she uses it to kind of get her way. Like, she obviously really wants to be in the Wondrous Society, but she could be doing the most extraordinary, terrible things, and she's not, because she doesn't want to, because she's not interested. She's just not that kind of person. Yeah, I just love her. And also, this isn't on the page, and it may be in future, like it may be something that is explained somewhere down the line, but in my mind, I've always thought that Baz Charlton didn't seek out Cadence. We know that Baz Charlton is a spaghetti patron. We know that he scoops up a lot of different kids to kind of throw them at the wall and hope that a few of them get into the society every year. Cadence wasn't one of them. I think that Cadence actually sought out Baz Charlton because she, and for reasons that we are kind of about to find out, it would almost be impossible for Baz Charlton to seek out Cadence. She just basically needed someone who was a bit dumb and easy to manipulate because she wanted to be in the Wonder Society. And I mean, that description fits Baz Charlton perfectly. Anyway, that's my little rant. That's my little TED talk on why I love Cadence Blackburn. So Morrigan, so obviously Cadence gets to the top of the leaderboard. She knocks everyone else down and she's at number 1. Morrigan is in the last group of 5 kids to go and do her trial, and she is panicking, obviously. Jupiter still hasn't shown up. She's waiting at the side and just thinking, I've got to go. I got to get out of here. I'm about to face the most miserable humiliation of my life. But it's worse than that, because even though she hasn't seen him yet, she knows that Officer Flintlock or Inspector Flintlock is somewhere out there, and he is waiting for her to fall on her face, at which point he will swoop in and demand to see her papers, and it will be all over Red Rover. However, as she is standing and about to go on, she hears a little voice. Ready? A whisper in her ear, a squeeze of her shoulder. She looked up. A ridiculous ginger head, a pair of twinkling blue eyes, a wink. Yeah, I'm ready. Jupiter has shown up. He has done just as he promised he would do, and he's there to take care of things. She takes this moment right at the last second to finally ask, Jupiter, what is it? What is my knack? And he looks at her, he says, oh, that. He blinked owlishly at her, as if she'd asked the least important question in the world. You don't have one. Then he stepped boldly into the arena, expecting her to follow. Captain Jupiter North presents Morrigan Crow of Nevermoor. Chapter 23, Foul Play. So Morrigan and Jupiter enter the arena. Morrigan is reeling from what he has just said to her, and everyone in the Trolliseum is suddenly perking up. So it's kind of the end of the day, everyone's a bit tired, but they see the great, the famous, the celebrated Jupiter North enter the Trolliseum, and suddenly everyone's interested to see who his candidate is and what her knack is going to be. And he does something unusual. Morrigan's now watched 70 something of these trials, and so she knows this is a weird move, but he actually goes up to approach the elders. Then Jupiter did something very strange. One by one, he held Elder Quinn, Elder Wong, and Elder Saga by their shoulders and pressed his forehead to theirs. They emerged from this odd exchange blinking and dazed, shielding their eyes, and stared at Morrigan for a long time in silent astonishment. And then Morrigan's name went straight to number 1. The Trolliseum explodes. Everyone is on their feet, demanding answers. Everyone's furious. We are sharply reminded of Bid Day, because that's exactly what happened then. Everyone's demanding answers about why this kid's getting special treatment. Jupiter says, come Mog, let us leave the stroppy masses to their strop. And they go backstage, and Morrigan is also furious, obviously, and she's on the verge of demanding answers, and Jupiter says, listen, this is really confusing. It's about to get much more confusing. Please just hold on for a bit. I promise you that when this is over, I will answer every single one of your questions in excruciating detail. And they pinky promise on that. And so the elders sweep in, and everyone's angry. Everyone's so mad, and they have a lot of questions, most of which Morrigan just doesn't understand. The upshot of this conversation that happens between the 3 elders and Jupiter is that, 1, Jupiter says, listen, I didn't tell you about this. I didn't give you any warning because I was worried about doing anything to disturb the gathering. And he also admits that he didn't even tell Morrigan, which of course the elders are just not impressed by. They can't believe that he has taken this kid through the entire trial process without her having any idea why. And the other thing that's really important that they talk about here is the Safeguard Pact. So they bring up the fact that typically a dangerous entity, when a dangerous entity such as a mesmerist or a conjurer of hurricanes or something like that enters the society, 3 respectable, upstanding people have to act as signatories to their Safeguard Pact, whatever that is. And Elder Saga says, 3, no, that would be fine if it was just a mesmerist or something like that, but for this, I'm going to say we need 5. And Elder Quinn says, no, we need 9, and that is non-negotiable. And of course the elders are like, well, there goes that, because where is he ever going to find 9 people who would be willing to sign this Safeguard Pact for this particular child? And Jupiter surprises everyone in the room by saying, I already have 7. I nearly had 8, but my last one just fell through. And Elder Quinn steps up and she says, I will sign it. I will be your 8th signatory. But if you do not find a 9th signatory before Morrigan's inauguration day, she can't join the society. Morrigan and Jupiter go to leave the Trolloceum, but they are intercepted by none other than all of Morrigan's favourite people in the whole wide world. Baz Charlton and Noelle Devereaux and Inspector Flintlock. And Cadence Blackburn is trailing along behind them as well, not to mention a dozen brown uniformed officers of the Stink. Charlton is accusing Jupiter of foul play because his favourite candidate, Noelle Devereaux, has now been knocked off the leaderboard altogether. So when Morrigan went to do her trial, Noelle was still just clinging on to 9th place, but now she is gone. She's been wiped off, and we will find out at the beginning of Wondersmith. We'll meet the person who knocked her off the leaderboard. So she's out of it, and Baz Charlton is furious, and Inspector Flintlock has decided to pounce with a loophole that he has discovered, which he thinks now puts Morrigan in his jurisdiction. He basically says the One Law Handbook says that for the duration of the trials, the candidates will be seen as Wondrous Society members, but the trials are over, the leaderboard is full, the elders have gone home, the inauguration isn't for weeks, and therefore there is this gap, there is this loophole that he has discovered where until the inauguration, from the end of the trials, Morrigan is there for the taking, there to be arrested and deported, and Morrigan thinks, oh no, this is it, this is the moment, I'm going to be put in handcuffs. But who should save the day but Cadence Blackburn? Again, Cadence comes along and she rips an old crumpled troll fight poster off the wall, hands it to Inspector Flintlock, and uses her mesmerism to say, here's her papers, get over it, basically. Says right here, she's a citizen of the Free State, now everything's in order, off you pop. And they do exactly what she says, and Morrigan is perplexed. She says, why have you done this? And Cadence says, because I hate Noelle. I don't like you much either, but I really hate Noelle. And also because her voice grew quiet. You remember me, don't you? You remember me from the chase. You nearly got me kicked out of the trials, Morrigan says. And Hellmas Night. Do you remember that too? Morrigan glowered. You pushed me into a pond. It's not something I'm likely to forget. Nobody ever remembers me, Cadence interrupted, speaking in a rush. She looked at Morrigan strangely. People forget, Mesmerist. That's the whole point. But you remembered. And she leaves. And so we're left with this puzzle, this information that Morrigan, out of everyone in the world, apparently, is the only person who remembers Cadence. And we don't know why. And that includes Jupiter North, even though he's a witness, because he has just witnessed this entire exchange. And at the end of it, he's like, who are you talking about? What girl? Who's Cadence? Okay, chapter 24, Battle Street. It's a short one. I think we can whiz through it. Here are the key points. Venestra comes to take Morrigan and Hawthorne and Jack, who had been there to see the show trial, back to the Deucalion for Jupiter, who has got to, he's got to go. Jupiter's got to Jupiter. Who knows what he's doing? And they go to Battle Street Underground Station, the four of them, and Venestra is complaining about how the Deucalion's been like Piccadilly Circus all day long. My words, not hers. And her main complaint is that Kedri has had the ghost hunters back in. So over summer there had been, if you recall, the Paranormal League had come to do an exorcism for this ghost that people kept seeing around the hotel. And Morrigan's like, I thought they got rid of that ghost. And yet, despite their really top-notch sage waving, Fen said dryly, our grey man is still hanging about the South Wing, spooking people. The South Wing. So Morrigan starts to piece some things together here. And Fen also mentions that people keep hearing him singing or humming, and so they've started calling him the Humming Man. And he keeps walking through the walls. And things start to click into place for Morrigan. They call him the Grey Man. Every time she sees Mr. Jones / Ezra Squall, he's wearing grey. The South Wing is where she ran into him on the night of the escaped Shadow Wolf. She heard him humming that night as well, or singing something. And he's walking through walls just like she and Jupiter walked through walls when they went on the Gossamer line to the Republic, which is where Ezra Squall is from. And she realizes that is how Ezra Squall is getting into the Free State. That is how she and Hawthorne saw him at the Black Parade and how she saw him at the hotel. And she tries to tell this to Fenestra, but suddenly On the train, she hears this distant sound of hooves, and then there's a baying of hounds, and then there's the shot of a rifle, and no one else can hear it but her. But then in an instant, she's engulfed by darkness, and there is swirling shadow and smoke all around her because the hunt of smoke and shadow has come to sweep her away. We are barreling towards the end of this book. It's the penultimate chapter, chapter 25, Master and Apprentice. Morrigan wakes up on an empty, disused Wonderground platform, the same station where she and Jupiter had caught the Gossamer line on Christmas night when they went to the Wintersea Republic. I say empty, it's not actually empty. She's not alone. Mr. Jones, aka Ezra Squall, is there on the platform, being a creepy dude. He is singing to himself the weird little tune that Morrigan thinks maybe she recognizes, maybe she heard it in her childhood. It sounds like a nursery rhyme to her. It has the sweet melody of a nursery rhyme and the kind of sinister lyrics that nursery rhymes often do have. Like, for example, Ring Around the Rosie, which is about the plague, and Rockabye Baby being about a baby falling out of its cradle. The lyrics to this one are, little crowling with button black eyes swoops down into the meadow where the rabbits all hide. Little rabbit, stay by mother's side, or the little crowling will peck out your eyes. Creepy. And that song has more verses that just get more and more sinister as the song goes on, and we will probably hear some of them in future books. Ezra Squall says, Miss Crow, you look like someone who's figured something out. Why don't you show me how clever you are? And she tells him the 3 things she has figured out. Number 1, I know that you're Ezra Squall, the Wondersmith. Number 2, the Courage Square massacre. I know that was you. You killed all those people. And number 3, I know that you sent the Hunter Smoke and Shadow after me on Eventide to kill me. And he says, well, yeah, you're partially right, but I didn't send them to kill you. If I was trying to kill you, you would be dead. The Hunter Smoke and Shadow are a perfect killing machine. I should know. I made them. I didn't send them to kill you. I sent them to herd you. And they failed the first time. They allowed the abominable Ginger to spirit you away into Nevermoor. But this time, they haven't failed. So he has been working all this time to find some way to allow the Hunter Smoke and Shadow into Nevermoor from the Wintersea Republic, because obviously he can't get in himself. And he's found it. He's found a weakness on the Gossamer line to exploit. And he tells Morrigan this, and Morrigan realizes, oh, everyone kept saying these things that were happening, the echoes on the Gossamer line, the derailments, everyone kept saying, oh, it's the work of the Wondersmith. And they were right. It was the work of the Wondersmith. And he has completed his task. He found this weakness to exploit, and now the Hunter Smoke and Shadow are able to come and herd her onto the Gossamer line, which was their entire task in coming here. And she sees the Gossamer train for the first time. He calls the train, and this time she has her eyes open. A silvery gold light shone from the depths of the tunnel, growing brighter and brighter, piercing the wall of blackness that was the Hunter Smoke and Shadow, until it finally broke through, shimmering and pearlescent, too beautiful and too terrible to look upon. And so the hunt kind of scatter, and then they reform around her and bundle her into this train to take her back to Crow Manor. So we are back in the Wintersea Republic, and there's been something of a role reversal, because now it is Morrigan who is travelling on the Gossamer line. Morrigan is the one who is incorporeal, unable to touch or affect anything around her, and Squall is back in his body, back in the full extent of his power as a Wondersmith, which he basically uses here to show off. He wants to show her what a Wondersmith can do, and he does this big flashy display of changing the facade of Crow Manor. It grows into this dark, tall, gothic cathedral, and he covers it in fairy lights, and he puts a big flashing neon sign on the rooftop that says, "Welcome to Morrigan Land." And he says, isn't this what you wanted? Isn't this why you chose that flashy, ostentatious fool with his hotel and his wondrous society and so on? He's all style, no substance. I bet he hasn't even told you yet, has he? Morrigan's like, tell me what? I've counted them, and there are 5 important things, 5 important pieces of information that Squall imparts to Morrigan in this scene. Number 1, Miss Crow, you are a Wondersmith just like me. Which, of course, Morrigan rejects entirely. Absolutely not. I am nothing like you. I'm not a murderer. Squall chuckled. Is that what you believe a Wondersmith is? An instrument of death? I suppose you're half right. Destruction and creation, death and life, all tools within your grasp once you know how to use them. This brings us to thing number 2 that he tells her. You must learn what we shall call the wretched arts of the accomplished Wondersmith, and I will gladly be your teacher. Let us begin with lesson 1. And in this conversation, the external walls of Crow Manor have been crumbling down to dust, and we see what is happening inside the house. And it is just a normal tableau of life for the crows these days. There's Corvus and Ivy and their twins and grandmother, and they are sitting in a room by the fireplace and totally oblivious to the danger that they are in. They have no idea what chaos is happening around them. And Squall makes the fire leap out of the grate, and it surrounds them, and they have no clue that they are surrounded by fire. And Morrigan says, just stop, leave them alone. Why do you care? Squall sneered. These people hate you, Miss Crow. They blamed you for everything that went wrong in their lives. When you died, when they believed you to be dead, they were relieved. And why? And this brings us to thing number 3 that he tells her. Because of a curse that never even existed. So Jupiter has already said this to Morrigan. He has said to her, you are not cursed. You are not a curse on anyone. But what Squall is saying is, there is no curse. And he explains to her, the curse was a very convenient way to explain why children like you, children born on eventide, have this nasty habit of kicking the bucket before or on the following eventide. But it's the hunter Smoke and Shadow, obviously we know, who has been going after cursed children. It's Squall himself who has been killing these cursed children. And the reason is because children born on eventide have the potential, not all of them, but they have the potential to grow up to become Wondersmiths. And at a certain age, as they get older, they start absorbing and attracting wonder, which is, as we know, the power source for the entire Republic, the entire realm. And Squall is supposedly the only one with the ability to control it and manipulate it and use it. And that is why he is so powerful and so wealthy in the Wintersea Republic. And so he has been destroying these children who have the potential to put him out of business, essentially, who have the potential to become these greedy little lightning rods, as he calls them. The other key thing that he says here, this is kind of 3A, not thing number 4, but 3A. I didn't make up all the stuff about you being to blame for everything. That was just this dark side of human nature that kicked in somewhere along the way. Somewhere along through the generations of cursed children, people decided that not only were these poor children who used to be a cause for compassion and pity because they were doomed to die, not only were they doomed to die, they also were somehow to blame for everything that went wrong. And it was people who decided that, not Squall. He says, I didn't make your family despise you. They did that all on their own. Shall I kill them for you? Morrigan says, no. No, thank you. Here is thing number 4 that he tells her. He asks, why do you think I let you live? I've destroyed so many others, been so patient all these years, waiting for the right one. A lesser man would have given up, but I knew that you would come. That one day a child born on eventide would rise to take my place, a child filled with dark promise, in whose eyes I would see a reflection of my own, my true and rightful heir. He knelt down to bring his face level with hers. His voice was so soft and his smile so sincere that for a moment Morrigan saw her friend, Mr. Jones, in this madman's face with its lines etched in shadow. I see you, Morrigan Crow, he whispered, his eyes glittering. There is black ice at the heart of you. Now this is a mirror of the conversation that Jupiter had with Morrigan much earlier on in the book, where he says to her, I see you, Morrigan Crow, and you are not a curse. You are not a curse on anyone. Essentially, Jupiter and Squall are offering Morrigan the same thing, or two sides of the same thing. They are offering her an education, a future, a place in the world. They are offering to elevate her and give her a reality where people love and respect her. But they're also offering very different things, because Squall is saying, I see darkness in you and I see how you could use that to essentially rule the world. And Jupiter is saying, I see goodness in you. And that is the thing that Morrigan has been wanting to hear her whole life. And so we see that it is Jupiter who understands Morrigan and Squall does not. He thinks he does, but we know that he doesn't, because Morrigan has no interest in having power over people. She just wants a family. She just wants to be loved, and she wants people to see the good in her. And so when he tells her this, something rears up inside her. A tidal wave swells up inside her. Morrigan stumbled backwards and instinctively threw up her arms, surrendering herself to the wave inside. A bright, blinding light filled the room, obliterating the haunt of smoke and shadow and dousing the flames with one booming golden white pulse that lasted several seconds, or maybe several days, or maybe an entire lifetime, and then was gone. In its wake, silence. The crows are still blissfully ignorant of what's going on. Squall, though, is on the ground looking up at her in shock. He is wide-eyed and lightning struck. So it's clear that he was not expecting that to happen any more than Morrigan was. It's taken them both by surprise. But he recovers himself and he says, "You've already apprenticed yourself to me." So this is thing number 5 that he is telling her. He's like, too bad, so sad. I wanted you to accept my offer, but it doesn't matter because you've already apprenticed yourself to me simply by living past your 11th birthday. The gathering is underway. Wonder has noticed you and you are at its mercy. We already know that this is true because Jupiter has said something about the gathering. He didn't want to disturb the gathering. Squall says, "You were born a Wondersmith, but if you do not learn how to harness wonder, it will harness you. If you do not learn to control wonder, it will control you. It will burn you slowly from the inside, and eventually it will destroy you." He says he's the only one who can teach her. He's the only living person who can teach her what she needs to know to stop this terrible fate of wonder controlling and engulfing her and destroying her from the inside. One day, very soon, you will come to a deep understanding of that terrible truth. And off he goes. This was all he wanted to do. He just wanted to tell her all of these things. And Morrigan remembers how to call the gossamer line, and she calls it, and she goes home to Nevermoor. Well, we made it. We are up to the very last chapter of Nevermoor, which is chapter 26W. So Morrigan is back at the Deucalion. It is some amount of time later, maybe the next day, maybe a few days. And she hears Jupiter say, "Open your eyes slowly." She knows she's in the Deucalion. She knows that she's standing in Jupiter's office, but she thinks, I could be standing on the surface of the sun. She is engulfed by this bright white light, and she's looking at herself in the mirror and she can just barely make out her own silhouette. "Don't look too long," Jupiter warned. The brightness didn't come from one big light. It came from thousands and thousands, maybe millions, maybe billions of tiny pinpricks of the same golden white light she'd seen at Crow Manor. They gathered around her like microscopic particles of dust, catching the light of a sunbeam. No, not like dust, like something living, moths gathering to a flame. "Is that wonder?" Jupiter says. "Nice, isn't it?" Nice was not the right word. It was beautiful, but it was not nice. There was something about it that was the opposite of nice. It made Morrigan feel some combination of awe and expectation and panic and joy and very large and very small and screaming and whispering and something else. And she says, "What's it doing?" And he says, "It's waiting. Waiting for you. Waiting for me to do what?" Jupiter was quiet for a long moment and then, "I guess we'll see." And so Jupiter has essentially, he then presses his forehead to hers and this vision of bright white light goes away. And she doesn't know if she's disappointed or relieved when it does. But this is what he had done to the elders, she realizes. This was Jupiter sharing his ability as a witness very briefly, just for a short window of time, with Morrigan so that she could see herself the way that he sees her. She's talking about Ezra Squall and she says, "He said I'm like him." It was the first time she'd voiced her fear aloud. It's true, isn't it? That's what the gathering is. It's this wonder gathering around me. It means I'm a Wondersmith. She swallowed. She could almost taste the word in her mouth. "Yes," Jupiter said gravely, "but try to understand. The word Wondersmith didn't always mean something bad or evil, Mog. There was a time in Nevermoor long ago when to be a Wondersmith was a celebrated honour." And he tells her that Wondersmith, no matter what she's heard, Wondersmith didn't always mean murderer or monster. Squall was the person who made it mean those things. And Morrigan can change its meaning again. He believes that she can. He says, "I meant it when I said you don't have a knack. What you have is so much more than that. You have a gift, a calling, and you get to decide what that means, nobody else." And so it's established that Jupiter knew all along that she was a Wondersmith. He knew all along that Squall had also bid on Morrigan, and so she's wasted all of this time and energy being stressed out about keeping this secret about Squall from him. And she says, "Why didn't you just tell the elders? If that was going to get me into the Wonder Society, why didn't you just tell them straight up?" And Jupiter makes this really important point that being a Wondersmith is not the most important thing about her, no matter what she might think. He says, "If it were the most important thing, Mog, wouldn't we hold the show trial first? Think about it. We had the book trial to see who was honest and quick thinking, the chase trial to see who was tenacious and strategic, the fright trial to see who was brave and resourceful, don't you think there might have been some fascinating knacks that we lost in those first 3 trials? Of course there were. Who knows? Maybe the most talented people of all were weeded out before the show trial even arrived. The point is, as far as the society is concerned, if you are not honest and determined and brave, then it doesn't matter how talented you are. You had to go through all 4 trials because I needed the elders to know what sort of person you are, in the hope, he paused, swallowing, and then quietly finished, in the hope they'll continue to see you as a person first and a Wondersmith second. Jupiter doesn't always get everything right. He doesn't necessarily have everything perfectly thought out. When we meet him in this book, he's 37 years old. He is not a parent. He has just taken on this role. He's a couple of years younger than me, and I'm an idiot. So he is kind of an idiot as well. He does not have all of the answers. He is not the great, wise, sage master that we have come to expect from fantasy novels, and that I think sometimes people want him to be. People want him to be this perfect role model who knows everything and never gets anything wrong, but he gets a lot of things wrong, and he also gets a lot of things right. And this was one of the things that I think he really got right. He thought this through from the beginning. Yes, he could have gone to the elders and said, hey, I've got this Wondersmith kid, you wanna? Obviously she has to be in the Wanderer Society, duh, there's no other place for her. But he didn't, because he knew that they would then forever just see her as this Wondersmith kid. They needed to see her go through these trials. They needed to see that she was capable, that she was honest and brave and tenacious, and all of those things that all of the other kids are who get into the society. He didn't want Wondersmith to be the most important thing about her. And I think that really sets Jupiter apart from the beginning and in a continuing way throughout the series as kind of one of the few adults who, or one of the few people who really see Morrigan for Morrigan and want other people to see Morrigan for the fact that she is just a child. She is just this kid, and she deserves a go at life as much as any other kid does, and he doesn't want people to forget that. I think Jupiter, he's silly in a lot of ways. He can be a silly goose, but we know that his heart is in the right place, and we know that even though he doesn't get everything right, even though he is not an experienced parent or guardian, which is this role he's kind of fallen into with Jack and Morrigan, he is someone who is coming from a place of goodness and coming from a place of trying his absolute best to get things right, even though he doesn't necessarily always do that. And that's my TED talk about why Jupiter is an idiot but kind of okay. This is the end of the book, essentially. A couple of other important pieces of information in here is that Morrigan realizes that Jack is also a witness. That was why he looked at her in that way. That was why when he had his eye patch off, he was looking at her in such sort of shock and terror and awe, was because he was seeing what she had just seen of herself in the mirror, because he is also a witness, just like Jupiter. And Jupiter tells her, yeah, he wears the eye patch because it would drive anyone to madness, seeing the things that we can see, seeing the million trillion threads of the bits of people that they leave everywhere, the fights they've had, the hurts they've suffered, the love and the little emotions and the ideas and the dreams and the thoughts. He can see all of that, and he has taught himself to be able to filter it out, but Jack's not quite there yet, and so the eye patch acts as basically a disruptor to that side. So when he's wearing it, he pretty much just sees what Morrigan or anyone else would see. Jupiter gives her her W pin, the thing that she's been trying for all of this time, and he's not really supposed to, but as we know, he's not that much of a rule follower in general. So he fastens the pin to her collar, this tiny little gold thing sitting there. He says, there you are, your ticket to a reserved seat on the Wonderground. Hope it was worth it. Morrigan laughed. It seemed insane to have gone through everything she had this year, cheating death, competing in the trials, facing Flintlock and Squall and the Hunter, Smoke and Shadow and every other wretched thing she'd faced, just for a tiny thing like this pin. But it wasn't tiny. It was big, a very big promise. The promise of family and belonging and friendship. And of course, Morrigan reflects on the year that she's just had, and she realizes, after all of that, I was fighting for all of those things, and now looking around at what she has at the Hotel Deucalion with Jupiter and Jack and Fen, and with her friend Hawthorne as well, she already has all of those things. Side note, we find out that the chandelier finally settled in its new form. A large black bird shining iridescent from certain angles, its wingspan spread over the lobby as if protecting the Hotel Deucalion and its inhabitants, or perhaps poised to swoop down on their heads. It depended on whom you asked. Jupiter said he loved it even more than the pink sailing ship. I think I might have talked about this in interviews before, I'm not sure, but to me, in my mind, the change of the chandelier is the Hotel Deucalion, who we know is a living sentient building. That is kind of the Hotel Deucalion not totally shifting its allegiance to Morrigan, but acknowledging her arrival and saying that this is an important person to me. I already know this is an important person. And the pink sailing ship sort of represented Jupiter. It's flashy and bright and rosy and cheerful, and it's a sailing ship representing exploration, and Jupiter is an explorer. And then we have the blackbird, which is clearly supposed to represent Morrigan, and it is cementing her place here in the Hotel Deucalion, saying, you are an important person here and this is your home. So at the end, Morrigan says, he'll be back, won't he, Squall? He'll come back with his monsters. Jupiter says, yes, I imagine he'll try. And Morrigan says, then we'll just have to be ready. And they are catching the brolly rail at the end of this book, and a group of children nearby are whispering and pointing at them. And for once, Morrigan doesn't feel that she's being whispered about because she is the cursed child. They're just a pair of Wondrous Society members with their pins gleaming on their coats. Patron and candidate, the mad ginger, and the strange little girl with black eyes. The end. And that is the end of Nevermoor. So, we've done it. If that's a read-along of Nevermoor, The Trials of Morrigan Crow, we just did it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that you are ready for Wondersmith, The Calling of Morrigan Crow, which we will kick off this week with chapters 1 to 9. You read those chapters in your own time, at your own leisure, in whatever format you prefer. And then next week, I will see you for the recap of those first 9 chapters. Hope you're enjoying the recaps. Is this how you do a read along? I don't know. I told you from the beginning. I'm making this up as I go along. But I have had some serious inspiration from V.E. Schwab, the magnificent V.E. Schwab's read-along of the Threads of Power series, where they sort of recapped those books for us. And I thought, what a great job. What a cool, fun idea from a cool, fun person. I want to do that. I do think that I yapped quite a lot more than they did. So apologies if yapping's not your thing. Listen, I keep trying every week to talk less, but this is a lifelong problem. I'm not sure I'm going to overcome it in the next 9 weeks. I can't make any promises, but I am trying. Now, speaking of yapping, I have one more thing to say to you, and I'm so excited. I'm so surprised that I have managed to hold off through this entire filming process of this week's video, because I am dying to tell you that I'm doing a giveaway of this. So I promised you a giveaway. I think I'm actually going to do 3 giveaways. I'm going to do one at the, kind of at the end of every book. And this one, it's a proof copy of Silverborn that has just arrived from my lovely UK publishers from Hachette, and it's so lovely. It's so tactile and soft, and it's a very special limited run. There are only 150 of these in existence, and I was sent 2, and I got number 1 of 150 and number 2 of 150. And listen, I'm keeping 1 of 150 because one day I'm going to be an old lady looking back on my life, digging through boxes of stuff, and I'll be like, oh, 1 of 150, there was a proof of that book that I wrote that time. So that's why I'm keeping that one. But this one is for you. You could be reading proof number 2 of 150. Look how thick it is. Now, you will already know about this because I'm going to announce this on my Instagram probably before this video comes out. But here is where I tell you how to enter. So first of all, you need to be subscribed to this channel and you need to be following me on Instagram. And I'm going to filter through entrance by having you comment on this video, this one. Comment below whatever you like. It's just a way for me to see all of you lined up so I can pick a winner. Comment whatever you like. Comment what you've enjoyed or not enjoyed about the read along, your favorite line, your favorite character. All I ask is that you keep it spoiler free for Wondersmith onwards, because I know a lot of people are rereading, but I know there are also some people who are reading for the first time. So no spoilers please for Wondersmith onwards. So no theories that you may have about Silverborn or whatever, but anything else, whatever you like. And I look forward to choosing someone to get this book. Oh, the other thing is I don't care where in the world you are. I will send it anywhere. It's open worldwide, and I will try to get it to you by express post. It probably won't come for a couple of weeks. I'll have to announce the winner in next week's video, so keep an eye out for that, and then I'll get in touch and I'll get this sent out to you, so hopefully you'll have it long before the book actually comes out. Exciting. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to give this away to someone. You have no idea. Anyway, that's enough blah 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 from me. I don't know how to end this video. Mwah. Good night. Bye.